Oh, there we go. Got it. Yeah, do the Laurier professors try and uh, preach to their students? And I'm just there we go. Okay, so yeah, just you can leave your cameras on because there's only a couple of people in here, so just that's no problem. If you want to just put your questions in the chat, Sam, maybe it'll come up. I don't really know how it is sharing screen, so I probably will be able to see something, but if you just want to hop on, if I miss a question or something, just that's no problem either. But yeah, there we go. So yeah, a little bit about myself. My name's Sam Taylor. Me and Sam always get comments when people meet us. Oh, Sam and Sam. It's always kind of funny. And right now I'm a fourth year business administration student at, like I said, Laurier University. And I'm in my third co-op term at the moment and second with Clarity. So how that works is my summers are in school right now. So I do work terms now, and I did one last winter with Sam. And then I do the second of the school terms in the summer, which people like, it kind of sounds bad, like, oh, you have to do school in the summer, but it's a lot of fun, actually. It's a good group of people that stay. Yeah, so I'll be graduating after this summer coming up. And I have chosen to concentrate in marketing. I really enjoy marketing. It's out of all of for the business administration program, it's finance courses, accounting courses, human resource courses, but marketing is sort of what I enjoy the most. I was a varsity Laurier athlete for a couple of years as a baseball pitcher. COVID, unfortunately, that's why I'm not a 4-year person, because I kind of stopped playing during the COVID year. It just didn't seem that appealing to me. All the rules you had that weren't put in place to play. So, but I was on the team for the first 2 years until 2021, I think. And I enjoy learning and interacting with, I took an entrepreneurship course this summer, and I found that really interesting. And that's why working with Clarity and Sam has been a really great fit for me. Sam's obviously a wonderful entrepreneur herself, and it's been really interesting and cool for me just to learn sort of what she's put into her business and sort of the techniques and things she uses to move her business along from where it's come. Yeah, so I thought it could be beneficial to sort of go over the sort of marketing concepts that you might be familiar with, and some things that you might have never heard of before, which is, I'm hoping there's a couple of those things, so you take something out of this. But yeah, just a couple of things that you might want to incorporate into your own companies or to your own side businesses. These are all concepts that are really pushed on students, and it's a lot of repetition. So it's a lot of, they kind of set the framework, and then we use the framework and sort of expand on it. But these are sort of the core pillars to what they're trying to preach to their students. So I thought I'd go over, these are kind of the steps. It's not always in this order, but I sort of made a rough outline into what we look for whenever we're giving a new case study. And these are sort of the things we do so these will be stuff for like our marketing exam this summer. It was at home, and they gave you I think it was a 4-page case study, and they just said, do a case analysis. And that was literally all the instruction we had. But you would have probably preferred a little more instruction, because no one really knew the specific rubric, which was kind of annoying. But we did know the general framework, because again, we've been going over it for the whole summer and in courses before. So yeah, so the first thing you have to look for in just marketing decisions is, what is the problem or the opportunity that you're currently faced with or you're trying to explore? And obviously this is sort of this is kind of key for marketing decisions, because you have to identify what you're trying to do. Are you thinking about expanding into a second location? Is there a problem because a new competitors entered your market and your products are very similar, or they're trying to take some of your market share. So you really have to identify the specific thing of what you're trying to do, what you're trying to expand to, and if there is a problem, how you're trying to solve that problem with different sort of methods. And after you identify that, a big thing is the decision criteria, and your decision criteria is it's usually more than one thing, and it's just things you want to have happen when you're thinking about potential ideas for solutions to your problem or opportunity. So for example, will your venture be profitable? Will your venture increase market share? And these are decided at the beginning, because everything you sort of brainstorm after you come up with your decision criteria, you can always go back and say, okay, well, does this do what I'm trying to have happen? So these are the first two things you really need to nail down. If you don't nail this, then it's going to be really tough to have the outcome you want, because you will be straying from if you misidentify your problem, well, that's not going to be good. And then if you don't keep relaying back to your decision criteria, then you might have an outcome, but it might not be the outcome that you really wanted to have happen to make your new idea or venture like a worthwhile thing to do. So SWOT analysis. So this is something that I don't know how many of these I've done. It's a lot, and they're not the most enjoyable thing to do, but they are worthwhile. And if you're unfamiliar with what a SWOT analysis is, it stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and risks. So this is really about sort of analyzing your internal and external environments of your company. So your strengths, and it's straightforward stuff. So what's your company's strengths? What's its competitive advantage? And then what are things that aren't that strong about your company, and things that you could hope to improve on? And same with opportunities and risks. It's just, that's the external side. What are some niche markets you could try and dive into? And then what are some risks of doing that? So, and every, I was gonna say this at the beginning, every little picture or little thing I have beside the text, this is from an actual case I did in the summer for the main marketing course. It was a big group project, and I think it took like a couple months to do. It was a while. Like, we had to do a lot of analysis, a lot of background research, and then present our findings to our class. So just like, you can see the examples, I can touch on a couple. So just for examples of what each thing would be: weaknesses, too concentrated reliance on donors. It's really just straightforward stuff, but it's just, you need to analyze what's working and what's not working, and then potential things that aren't in your internal environment that you could either explore or try and stay away from. And then to kind of pair with the SWOT analysis, in my opinion, an even less interesting one, but still worthwhile. Like, you need to do it. It's just not the most fun thing to do, but your PEST analysis. So PEST stands for political, economic, social, and technological analysis. So this is basically, it's only external analysis. This is all about your environment. So the graph, or the little image I have here, this is from, at Laurier, there's this week in the summer for third years called Ice Week, and it's where there are no classes, and every single person in the program has 1 week. You get to put into a group on Monday, you're giving a case study, and you're all doing the same case, and you're making a recommendation, and you're making just a presentation about what you identify as the problem for this company, and what your solution would be, and why that makes sense. So like a political, back to PEST, a political sort of analysis, it's like labor laws, tariffs, like anything sort of government related that might impact your business. That's a political aspect of the PEST. Economic, so the example we used was the change in the COVID pandemic. Our solution was based on healthcare and hospitals, so we talked a lot about that in our past. So just the increase in healthcare spending with the pandemic, that's going to be a significant economic factor that you should take into consideration. And we used it to identify a potential opportunity for a new market we could explore. Social aspect, that was more, our solution was dealing with a big database for hospitals, just not to get too in detail, but like privacy concerns. That's a big social aspect because social is sort of about the consumer perception of what you're trying to do. And obviously we felt that privacy concerns would be a big issue with the amount of medical information that clients would have to put in to make the technology work. And then technological analysis. So this is sort of, it's pretty self-explanatory, but so our solution was this big database where it'd be easier for healthcare workers to schedule things. And it's made up. So it's not like we had the technology or know how it works, but it was futuristic. So that's a technological analysis because it's sort of, it could be a competitive advantage because it's not really out in the market. And then to your consumer analysis. So this is, I think this is one of the most important things you have to do when you're thinking about marketing decisions. This is where you identify who you're trying to promote your product or service to. So this is where you need to identify your niche markets and sort of who you think will be the best sort of customer segment to really target and go after to build your consumer base. And a great, like what we do for almost all of our case studies is we make this little graph. It has a weird name. We just called it a segment analysis because it has like a long name, but it's fine. So basically what you do is you choose a couple of factors as your X and Y axis. So we did individual benefit and societal benefit and large donations and smaller donations. And then as you can see too, the consumer segments are different, like some are bigger, some are smaller. And that's where you can kind of map out, okay, so micro donors, for example, it would be the biggest consumer segment out of the 5 that we listed, but it's in the smaller donations with the societal benefit section of the graph. So that could be something where, okay, so you know it's going to be a big group of people, but it might not be in the graph segment that you would prefer to target to. And this is where also you should just list as many consumer bases as you can, because you don't need to just focus on the one you are going to target primarily. But if you list out all of your potential options, you can sort of rank them against each other and sort of map out in your head where you think you would be the most successful if you market each specific group. This is one where if you don't sort of lock down this, it can be really hard because then you're trying to spread your resources to consumer bases that might not be as motivated. Whereas if you pooled your resources into 1 or 2 consumer group, usually we come up with 2 we think would be beneficial to look at. And that's where you really want to spend your time and energy going at these consumer segments, because if you map it out, you would think they're the most worthwhile groups to target for your product or service. And then after you do, you figure out where you're trying to target your consumer base, you have to look at the competitors. And this is also really, really important when you're trying to map out these decisions, because you need to know how your product or service matches up to other competitors in your industry. Like once you know what your competitors and the specific things they are trying to do, you can either try and make your product or service better than theirs, or you can go at a different niche market. And niche market basically just means, for those who don't know, I keep saying it, it's like a small area of the market you think would be beneficial to try and target, where you don't think there is a competitor there already. So it's essentially your company would be the first one to target those groups of people. There's no other competitors that are offering the specific things that your company is offering already. You're the first one on the scene. So what we came up with in the summer, we use three and the left axis is just the competitors, and then the top you can change. It can be, you know, product uniqueness. It can be whatever sort of you want. It's all personal and all stuff that you can do it your own way. It doesn't have to be what we did. So we just did scale, so how big the company was, mission. So this is kind of the most important one we did, because what are the companies trying to do? And if you want to be the same as the different companies' mission, then you have to really hope your product has uniqueness, and your competitive advantage is really strong. And this is also after you figure out where your company sort of stands with the competitors in your industry. This is where you can write a positioning statement. So a positioning statement, it's not the most important thing when making your marketing decisions, but it's really just a good, straightforward sentence or two about what exactly you are trying to do for your consumer base. So this is where, if you have a strong competitive advantage, you should really try and really exploit it here, really sell your consumers about, okay, what makes my company different and like better? What makes my products unique compared to somebody else? So this is where, this is like a little thing, but it's still nice to put, even for yourself to look back onto and just sort of keep relaying okay, does this hold up with my positioning statement? It can be worthwhile to keep having this in the back of your mind, so all your decisions are kind of based around where you want to position where your company is. Okay, and so now we look at, so after we've looked at what the problem or opportunity is, decision criteria, and then analyzed both our competitors and where our consumer base is, this is where we look at potential alternatives to solve this problem or exploit this opportunity. So usually we would come up with 3 or 4 is always a good number. Like the more you can, the better. They don't even have to be, some of them don't have to be like great ideas. It's just nice to list them, and then you can sort of do pros and cons for each. So what, like for ours, it was about funding. So how are we going to make money for this fictitious company that we had to analyze? So we had individual funding, corporate funding, and digital syndication. Basically just means like making money off advertisements and website things of that nature. So this is where you list up every sort of idea you have to make your venture happen, and then you can compare them against each other and see what you believe will be the best path forward for what you're trying to do with your current situation. These are really, they don't have to be nailed down in the alternative stage. They can be a little broad. It's just sort of the overarching idea that you want to explore more. And then you keep winnowing it down the further you go along. But at this stage, you can kind of just say, okay, I know the rough outline of where I want to go here and what I want to do. I have that. I can keep that in the back of my mind. And now my decisions after this will be narrowing it down and making this idea the best and how much I want it to it's like how much I want to
personalize it to my company. So this is where you overarching idea, and then after this, you can start winnowing it down after you decide on which alternative you think is your strongest one. And once you choose your alternative that you're going to go forward, this is where you can make your risks and contingencies plan. So we don't do this for all of the case studies we're assigned. This is sort of if you want to go a little, because sometimes you are asked. I remember in our oral presentation, we were asked to, one of the questions was, okay, so if your alternative doesn't work, do you have like a plan B? And like, or how, if this doesn't happen for your alternative, how do you plan on solving it? So a great thing that we did, and just it's a very easy to do, is just a likelihood and impact little chart, and then ranking sort of what you think will be probably an issue that might happen, and then how devastating that problem could be. And it's good to think about these things early, because then if they do happen down the line, you are prepared and you sort of, okay, well, I did think there was a chance of this happening, and I have a couple of ideas to lessen the impact of this and sort of move forward even with this issue. I have like a couple contingency plans ready to use. So one of ours, hospitals not interested in product offering. That would be a really big problem for trying to sell a product to hospitals that we believed would really help them. If they're not interested, well, that's that would have a big impact in trying to move forward in this opportunity. So then you and then you match them up on the graph, and then we just said, explain to hospitals the benefits of the product. And if this continues to fail, pursue new industries. Because if the person or the groups of people you're trying to sell your product or service to, if they don't like the idea, well, it's time to go do a new industry, or just create a brand new idea, because that's kind of, you're dead in the water if that happens. But there are some things you can do, like go more in depth, organize calls with them to sort of detail it more, because it's rare that in your first sort of interaction with them, it's more sort of the broad talking points instead of the really like micro details. So there are some things you can do. Whereas if like our number 3 one, employees do not adapt to change in company, that would have not no impact, but that's something you can work through and do things that can improve that and make sure that's not a big issue in derailing your service or product. We just said communicate clearly with employees that the company is simply focusing their efforts to one single niche. Their jobs largely will not be changing. So there are that's why it's low on the graph, because that's not something that will derail your whole venture that you're trying to achieve. But this is still, we don't do this every time, but it's still a worthwhile exercise just to work through, if even so, just to make you more confident in dealing with problems if they do arise. So I was talking a lot about how to choose which alternative will be best in making in dealing with your problem or going into your opportunity. And what we almost do, I made so many of these too. What we do, I think, like every time we're doing a case analysis, are these things called a decision matrix. And this is a very worthwhile exercise to do. And I found it really helpful, because it's sort of a quantitative way in coming up with a number that actually sort of tells you which idea will be the best. And this is all before you go into the ideas, but you can sort of do a rough draft of what you think will be the best possible solution or opportunity that you can explore. So how these work is on one axis, you put the three alternatives. So you can see individual funding, corporate funding, and digital syndication. That's on one. On the other axis, you put your decision criteria. So this is what I talked about at the beginning. Your 3 or 4 things that you're trying to have happen when you're choosing an alternative, and when you're sort of going into this new venture, these are the things you want to have happen. And after you lay those out, so it's all going to be different, you assign a weight and like an actual number to each decision criteria. So at the bottom, it says weight out of 5. And this is where you sort of rank your decision criteria about, okay, I really want expansion opportunities. That's something I have to have. Would consistent revenue flow be nice? Yes, but I need the expansion opportunities and the growth potential more than I need that right now. So I would rank the expansion opportunities a 5 and the consistent revenue with flow a 3 at the moment. And once you have those numbers sorted out, now you rank in the middle, you rank your alternatives again out of 5 in terms of, okay, how impactful do I think individual funding will have on expansion opportunities? Oh, I think it's going to be really impactful. That's a 5 out of 5 then. That's something that I think will be strong. And that's something that I think will be really beneficial to use individual funding, because I think that will help my expansion opportunities. And so you assign a number to each decision criteria with the alternatives. And once you do then, so I have all these random numbers on the right side, total. You take the number in at where the alternatives and decision criteria cross. So expansion opportunities in individual funding, it's out of 5. And you multiply that by what the weight is out of 5. So I talked about which the decision criteria I need to have happen and which I think are most important. I multiply that by how impactful I think the specific alternatives will be in making that happen. So why this is a 53 for individual funding is 5. So you 5 out of 5 for individual funding, and you times that by 5, which is the weight. So that's 25. If you keep going, it's 12 and then 16, and that makes 53. So you do that for each alternative, and you see the different numbers, and that's why individual funding is highlighted in green, because the alternative that has the highest total score at the end, that is the one that roughly at the beginning you feel like will have the most benefit to your company. That's the one where you think, okay, we're going to go with the individual funding because we believe it helps us reach our decision criteria the most. So we think that's the most beneficial path to choose. So it's a really good chart to use, because it just gives, again, just a quantitative number. It's not all qualitative thing. Well, I think individual funding will be good, but corporate funding, there's going to be some growth potential. I don't know how to like compare these two. So this is just a way of really getting a nice ranking for each and sort of figuring out, and these can be wrong. Like you can find out that, okay, well, individual funding, that actually wasn't good expansion opportunities, but this is just something that can help you choose your path at the beginning and sort of help you rank your alternatives that you come up with. It's a really good thing to do when you're making decisions. Yeah, so one of the definitions I found in the textbook is it's effective when you're comparing multiple options or criteria that need to be narrowed down to one final choice. So this is something where, just like I said, it's just good for winnowing down and sort of assigning numbers to specific portions of your solutions. And it's really helpful in narrowing it down to your final choice. So so now we have our alternative. This is what we're going to use, and we're going to do individual funding. What do I do now? So now this is, I would assume most of you know the 4 Ps, because this is like, I think we learned this on the first day of our marketing course in like second year. This was the first class. This is pretty basic stuff. So 4Ps are product, price, place, and promotion. And in this step, you outline the specific details of your product and service and how you're going to market it, every aspect of how you're going to market it. So the product, obviously, what you're going to sell, what your service is going to be. And this is where you can really outline just specifically what your company or what your company is trying to do for your consumer. This one's pretty straightforward. And same with price. Price is just, and why there's two options too is because you can have a couple of options, a couple of ideas how you're going to do it, but it's just, okay, for price, we're going to sell it to small consistent donations, or we're going to do large lump sum donations, and then you can kind of see which avenue you think would be the most beneficial. Place is just where you're going to sell your product. So this can be, okay, well, I don't have a store. I'm just going to do it strictly through e-commerce. So I'm going to sell my products online, and that's your place. That's where you're selling your products. Or I could have a brick-to-brick store, and I have an actual warehouse, and people can come in and see and test out the products. Okay, my place is going to be a brick and mortar store. Promotion, and that's just all your social media, your conferences, your webinars. This is where you outline how you're going to get the word out to your consumer base that I have a new product or service, and this is where you can come find it. So promotional activities is all it's basically just raising awareness for any new thing you're trying to do. It's pretty self-explanatory, but this is just a nice thing to outline after you have your pathway to just really, this is where we winnow it down and go over more of the details for how specifically I'm going to market the product or service. Yeah, so it's defined as a set of marketing tools that the firm uses to pursue its marketing objectives in the target market. Just a fancy way of just like detailing what you're actually going to do with your product and service if you're launching a new way of doing things in your company. It's pretty straightforward. Okay, so this is kind of the last thing you do. Basically the last thing you do when you're thinking about something new for your company, and your implementation plan. It's really important. We do this on every single case analysis we're given. So implementation, just you're splitting up your future into time periods, and you're setting aside goals that what you want to have done in those time periods. And it's a really good test to see if your idea is realistic or not, because you can track how feasible it is. If your short-term goals take double the time, so short-term in the little example, 1 to 6 months, if international expansion planning takes 2 years, okay, well, either my implementation plan is really off, or my actual plan it's not working with how I thought, and I might have to go back a few steps and sort of rearrange what I'm trying to do. This is where all of your planning you see how effective and realistic it is, because now you're into the real world and you're seeing how specific actions actually see how they go compared to how you thought they were going to go. So these are just arbitrary time periods. It's something usually along like 1 to 6 months, 6 to 12, and 1 to 3 years. It's something it's similar to that, but again, it can be totally different. It's really up to you how you want to split up your time, but it's just nice to give yourself short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals, because you can do each preceding goal. So like you can do your short-term goals because you want to really expand European and South American markets in 2.5 years, but that starts with the planning in your first 6 months, right? This is where you kind of set your roadmap, so you can kind of really follow it as you go along and don't lose sight of what you're trying to do down the road. It's really important, because this is where all of your planning, you sort of put in action, and you start to see where you were right and where you weren't necessarily spot on with how you thought some of your actions were going to go. And this is called a Gantt chart, and it's just really a even more visual example. And we use these a lot too, not every time, but it's worthwhile to create one, because it's just it's a really good visual example of where you think how long certain tasks are going to take instead of just listing them. So you can see kind of how it works. So at the top, it's just specific, it's month by month until the end, which is 1 to 3 years. And you can see, okay, I think micro donation implementation will be 2 months. I'll do that in the first 2 months, and then I'll be done with it. Whereas begin hosting virtual events for alumni donors. Oh, actually, I think that's going to be, something I should do a lot in my short term to sort of build awareness. So I'm going to do that for 5 months of the 6. So this is where you can sort of outline how long you want to do each thing, and how long you think each thing will take to be effective. And some things are going to be a lot longer than others. That's totally fine. That's sort of the whole point of this, is to really map out how you want to spend your time in each term. It's good to have the list, but you would think in the list for each time period, there will be some activities that you want to do more of than others. And this is a good visual example of how to show that. So yeah, so just to so that's sort of how we go about case analysis. And in the summer course, I forget the exact name, but it was just a marketing course that I took. And it was really just case analysis every class. So that's sort of, it always starts with a problem. Something's not going right in the business. And you need to identify the problem and sort of you sort of have to figure out, okay, what would you suggest to that company? And that's why again, all those steps, you don't have to go in order. That's kind of the order, especially like problem decision. The stuff at the beginning, you really need to nail down. Everything else you can kind of be fluid with, except that's just the order we usually go about doing it. But yeah, those are the steps that we take to identify our internal and external environment, and then how we make a plan in creating a solution we think will be beneficial. And then at the very end, how we plan on executing those steps and making it successful and solving the problem, or exploring the opportunity for the fake businesses that were assigned. So thank you for listening, and I don't know if there's any questions, but that's everything on my end for right now.